Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of Radiorama, where, as the name implies, I show you how to work on radios and other stuff, televisions, uh, stereo systems, anything that runs on vacuum tubes from the 1920s through about the 1960s, even though, admittedly, I probably hover between the 30s and 60s. Don't do a lot of 20s stuff. And today we have a pretty much run-of-the-mill General Electric 480B alarm clock. They made a gajillion of these. I've probably worked on this model 10 times. It's very atypical 1950s American design. This one, it's too lazy to look up the date. It's made before 1955 because after 1955 you would see little triangles here and there, which would have been the civil defense marking. They did away with those in 1963, and by that time, I think they'd long quit making this model. It says it's a lighted dial. That probably means there is a neon bulb hidden back there, and it's probably darkened and carboned up itself where it's probably not visible anymore. The clock works. I don't know if the radio works. You can see the second hand is sweeping. That is a telecron movement. Let's go ahead and fire it up. There should be a light that follows the dial back here, but I don't see it. That could just simply mean it's burned out.
Your inventor of My Pillow products, Mike Lindell, understands the importance.
It works, but those filter caps are 95% gone. I'm not going to play it anymore because I could do some damage. I have had this sitting around, and I almost didn't want to work on it because this plastic, it just well, it's very brittle. There's a lot of people that will put these back together again after replacing the tubes, and they'll crack the plastic. And likewise inside, the clock is held in with teeny little screws that tend to get cracked. And because this is the ugly white model, kind of boring and bland, it's going to get a custom paint job, and so I'll need to mask all that off. We'll see how I do that. It's got some edges here. Let's go ahead and pull the knobs off, and we'll take the back off and see what's going inside. Okay, so here's the back off of it. Cosmetically and physically, it's in really great shape. There's no cracks. And maybe I need to look up the year. I can't imagine they made this in 63, but that is a really small telecron rotor. That looks like a later unit. From the 50s, I would expect it to have the larger copper drum. I'm talking about this guy in the middle here. That's the telecron rotor. But that looks suspiciously much newer than what I would expect in a 1950s set. Then again, I'm not the world's biggest genius about these things. Here is the location of the aforementioned neon bulb. I can tell it's neon because we've got this dropping resistor. If you get up to 110 volts directly, it'll just explode. Very little to replace here. There's these two caps, the pyramid and the one below it, and then the electrolytic. The rest of these are ceramic, and they're fine, and they don't go bad unless you strike them with lightning or physically break them. But in order to get this chassis out, I need to take out the speaker and the clock. And like I said, you got to do it kind of carefully because you'll break this plastic if you look at it. All right, well, I got all the guts out, and this is why I really don't like working on this model. You have to take all that out, and you've got this big gangly thing that you have to deal with and make sure you don't damage, like you don't want to poke holes through the speaker. That's why I've got it facing downward. And you don't want to loosen any of these. And it seemed like General Electric at this time period would make these radios and electronics that were just a big ball of wire. I checked out the electrolytic here. I had to get a really bright flashlight to see the values, and you're not going to see it, but there's two values in here, and there's embossed on the cardboard is A, B, C. A is the common negative, which is going to be that lug right here. This lug is apparently C, that is 50 microfarads. And B is this lug right here, that's 75 microfarads. So what I'm going to do in order to make sure that I don't lose the orientation of how this goes into the chassis, I'm going to get my permanent marker, oops, and mark a big fat line like that, and on the capacitor. That way when I pull it out of there and I forget where it was oriented, I can just put it back in there, no problem. Now, the way that we're going to have to remove this is use something called a solder sucker. So let me flip everything over and we'll get to work on that. Woo! I just paced gas. Anyway, I'm kind of looking at this thing, and this is radio number, I think 4 or 5 for me this week, because I'm kind of in a rush to get things done for the show we're having in a few days. I'm tired of working on radios this week. I think I'm going to have to let this one sit until Sunday, or maybe I'll work on it tomorrow, but especially this model, whatever, it can wait. All right, welcome to day 2 working on the General Electric, and what I need to do is take this guy out, and the way we're going to do it, we're going to use this tool here. It's got a stupid name. It's called a solder sucker. It's spring loaded. There's basically a little plunger inside of here, so right now it's depressed, and when you push this button, that creates a little bit of suction, and it'll pull molten solder away from the solder joint. So I'm going to turn this over. I'm going to put my phone on my holder, and I'll show you how you go about it, because a lot of people, if you don't have this, it makes it really difficult, and if you crack that PC board, then that's going to cause a lot of other problems. Alright, let's see if this works. So the area that we need to kind of remove stuff from is probably around this area here. Great. Could very easily poke a hole in that speaker. Alright, so there. So what I'm going to start doing is going around and removing solder, or we're going to heat it up real good and get it molten. And then we're going to come in here and start pulling the stuff away. I know this is not exactly the most exciting thing to watch, but truth be known, 80% of restoring radios is not exactly the most exciting thing in the first place, because you spend most of your time just replacing capacitors. Now let's see. Whoops, bumped it with my hat. How many legs does this have? It looks like it has 3. 1, 2, 3, and on the outer extremities. Almost taking a guess here as far as which ones are which. Let's see what would make sense. 1, 2, 3. I don't know. Don't you just love it when I make these videos and tell you that I'm going to show you how to work on radios, and then I spend most of the time kind of bumbling myself around? It's called showmanship there. Okay, I think I found the lugs. We got this one, and that one. Those are the 3. So now what I want to do is I'm going to clip those leads so that I can get the solder sucker and the soldering iron down there easier. So we're going to, let's see if I can get this with the camera. Snip those guys off. And by the way, if you don't wear glasses and you're doing this stuff, then you need to make sure and wear safety glasses, because you can, it's like the Christmas store, you'll poke your eye out with little bits of solder or little bits of tinned metal like flying at you. So again, we're just going to go around, get as much of that stuff as we can away from these lugs. And once you get enough of the solder away from these joints, you can maybe go in and start wiggling the can a little bit, see if you can get it out of there. Usually I just start with the one corner. Be easy now. You don't want to overdo it. I can already feel it kind of working itself loose a little bit. I just kind of gently wiggle it. And it feels like it's starting to come free. Yeah. Let's get this guy over here. Oh, come on. You see what I did? I lifted one of the leads right here. Of course, I got it facing away from you guys. You know what? This is horrible. So what I need to do is get the rest of the solder pulled out, and we'll pull that can off. All right, so we did manage to pull it out of there. Here's the underside of it. Yeah, it was definitely on its way out. I've marked the holes. I know you can't read that, but 30, 80, and negative. So our 80 positive lead of the new replacement electrolytic will go there. I'll put a 47 microfarad here, positive there, and then this is the shared negative. And this is not a metal. I don't think it's a metal can, so I don't think they're using the can itself as a bridge for negative. So I could probably just run those here, and that'll be fine. So let's get a replacement electrolytics out, and we'll stick them in the holes, and then we'll give a test fire on this guy to make sure if it's restored proper radioage and it's not humming away like it was. All right, here's our replacement electrolytics. The big fat one is it's 100 microfarads. It's going to replace our 80 microfarad one, and the other one's 47. That will replace the 30. You can go at or over your capacitance. You don't want to get too silly, but we'll stick them in these holes and we'll give it a test fire, see if we have restored proper working order. All right, well, we're back on, and something I noticed is that the neon light is actually in pretty good shape here. Pretty good and bright. That's unusual. Usually these things are on for usually the clocks run for decades, but maybe this wasn't the case. Let's go ahead and try it out. Is it turning on or what? I can't tell because the tubes are... So yeah, they're on. Okay. Where's my volume? Volume control is pretty stiff.
If you speak English, you don't know where to speak, but you know people who do speak Spanish. These of signers Ellery and Clymer and Hall and Gwinnett and Walton and Hayward and why?
All right, well, that's good. Double good, they don't have to replace that neon bulb. That was going to be a pain in the butt. Oh, we're in good shape there. So what's left to do is replace... There's two more capacitors that need to be replaced. This guy, I'm going to bet that is the cross the line cap. And then we got this 047 rated cap back here. Need to replace the pilot light because it's going to be pretty difficult to see what station you're on without it. And then maybe I'll move on to the cabinet. I don't know if I want to paint it today. It was hot as blazes last week, and now we're having some weird cooler weather. It's like 65, 70. It's a little too cool, in my opinion, to paint, but who knows, we'll see. I decided to work on the cabinet. I took the cabinet over to the sink and cleaned it up. Cleaned up pretty well, actually. I wish it wasn't this boring white color, but anyway, after looking at this, I realized it's going to be very difficult for me to mask that off and make it look halfway decent. So I'm going to do what I tend to have to do anyway, which I hate doing because it's a pain, this is plastic welded, like on these tabs here. There's 4 of them. And the way that you remove them, actually there's a bunch more. There's 2 up here as well. What you do is I'm going to get my soldering iron and I just kind of melt those. And you push it through, and I've got my fan going so I can blow that stinky plastic smell away, because I'm sure that's not great for you, so I'd rather have it out of here. This is why every time I work on one of these and it's not in a cool color, I'm just like, yep, I'm going to have to do that trick again. It's not fun. Well, that was a failure. That didn't work at all. This must be a later model, because those were in there so good. I could tell there's no way I'm going to be able to free them, so I'm going to have to be real creative, find a way to mask this off or I don't make it look stupid. Alright, here we go. I did mask all that off and it took forever. But you want to do it right. Now I'm shaking up my spray paint. I usually shake my spray paint up for at least a good minute. We're going to paint it gloss banner red. And I also warm this up in a little bit of warm water, then it flows out easier. Why does that piece of tape keep on coming up? Stay. So let's go ahead and spray this thing, and I'm really cutting it close because there's some fog coming in off the ocean, so hopefully it won't get here before this cures. So just make a sweeping motion. Don't stop it anywhere particular. You just want to keep on moving around the piece. It's a great thing about white radios is that they cover real well with vibrant colors. Alright, we'll just work our way around the piece. I really should not be doing this in this kind of weather. But what can I say, I'm impatient. Alright, I can't do this with one hand. I need to move around, so I'm going to put the phone down. Color me impressed with that paint. I mean, that is... I'm not sure if you can get the gloss here. I mean, it's like a mirror. And it settled really nicely. I'm not sure if it's because I warmed it up or if it's the brand. I have been using Rust-Oleum, but it seems like whatever this Krylon stuff is fantastic. Just lays down real smooth. Oh, here's real important too. You want to make sure and get your back edges. You know, if someone looks in the back and they see white, they're gonna know the game's up. That they have a painted radio. Most people just don't know it's painted anyway, but if it looks believable, you might as well go all the way and get all the little details. Alright, so the paint job turned out pretty good, and the masking did its job. To the ordinary person, they would never know that this was masked off. But anyway, it's actually been sitting outside for 3 or 4 days. The paint, while it did do a good job of settling and making a nice even finish, seems like it takes a little bit longer to cure. We had a few days which were weird. Usually this time of year is pretty hot here, but we had 2 or 3 days where it was kind of cool. And so this has been sitting in the hot sun for about 2 days, and then 2 days in cool weather. So it probably would have cured a little bit faster, but whatever. It's now time to add the oh-so-famous audio input feature that I add to all my sets. Well, at least the sets that I deem are not going to be able to find new homes unless they have such a feature. And I'll show you how to get to that. We're going to take this chassis back over to the counter and we'll get going. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to run audio via this cable into the radio and out the speaker. And how we're going to do that, and if you've watched my other videos, you'll know what I'm getting ready to say, is we're going to go in through the volume pot, which is this guy, this little dealio here. It has 3 lugs, top, center, and bottom. The top is more than likely the yellow wire, which is the incoming radio signal. Now we can confirm that by clipping that wire. And the reason that we want to clip that wire is because we want to have the ability to switch the radio signal on and off. Because all that volume pot is doing is essentially controlling the volume for the audio signal, the signal that is being fed. Doesn't matter if it's a radio signal or an audio signal, they're both the same. It doesn't know any better. And so what we're going to do is have a little switch that comes out of the back of the unit via this skinny little wire and this little switch. But for electrical safety and also for sound quality issues, we want to run the audio first through this. This is a transformer. I think some people get confused when I say it's an isolation transformer, because that is the action that we're doing. We're using a transformer to isolate the user from any potential current. And all this is, I ordered these by 100 at a time via the museum, but if you don't have this sitting around, all it is just a transformer where 120 volts goes in, 12 volts goes out the other side. It's like a wall wart. Now if you're in the UK or some other place that has 220, it'd be the same thing. 220 in, 12 volts out, same difference. You can usually crack an old ice or an old wall wart open to extract the transformer inside. It might be a little bit bigger, no matter. It'll do exactly the same thing. And the ideal situation is you want to mount this as close as you can to that volume pot. And I think I can do it just by simply putting it here. I already put the screw in to make sure it's not going to hit that. That's as close as that can get. So we're going to glue that to this. Now, we're not out of the woods yet. The other thing that we need to do is make sure that we, for one thing, ensure that we have true mono audio input. You just can't tie your wires together, your right and left channels. What we're going to do is we're going to put these two resistors together. It can be anywhere from 75 to 100 ohms or more. Tied to 2 ends together, right and left channel goes on either end, and that goes into the secondary side of the transformer. Secondary side meaning the low voltage side. That then goes, the primary side, which is the 120 volt side, goes to either end of the volume pot, the top and bottom. We also want to make sure that we preserve what is known as the set's automatic gain control, or the AGC. So we will run the positive of, or the top of the volume before we get to it, via a resistor that's half the value of the volume pot, as well as a 0.02 rated capacitor. And this can be really low voltage. We're not dealing with a whole lot of voltage here, or current to speak of. And then of course we'll need to have a switch wire that, as I already indicated, between that input and the volume control. Now, I know that's a mouthful, but I'm trying to explain it in layman's terms, and I will go ahead and put this together, and I will show you what that looks like when it's completed. All right, so this is the result, and it's really hard to film because, again, this is just the most janky chassis. Like, you just have to make a huge fucking wad of crap that you have to take out of the case. Anyway, we have our audio cable coming out of the back through a hole. We're going to have a switch here, which is going to be this wire. I made it intentionally longer than it needs to be because, you know, if it's too short, too bad. You know, you're out of luck. But if it's too long, you can just snip a little bit. No harm done. So, with the radio temporarily disconnected, because I haven't put in the switch yet for the radio signal, we're going to go ahead and test this guy. We have the Bluetooth running through. Uh-oh, is it even on? Yeah, it is. All right, let's see. That is not a very pleasant sounding speaker. Nothing wrong with it. It's still flexible. It's just, maybe it sounds better when you put it back in the case. It's okay. Some of these sounded like crap. There's nothing wrong with that. It's how it came from the store. Okay, well, after much trial and error, I got this stupid thing back together again. I swear, every time I work on one of these, I like try to remind myself how difficult it is to disassemble and reassemble this model. But it's all back in one piece now, and it seems to be working reasonably well. Oh, come on. Got the old Bluetooth running through it. Well, that was the end of that song. Then if someone wants to listen to the radio, they can just unplug this and flip the little switch in the back over.
Well, yeah, I don't know.
One more question for you, and I don't know if you've heard.
I kind of like the that backlight there. I know you can barely see it in this light. Let me see if I can move this out of the way a little bit. Yeah, see that? Kind of follows the stations. Anyway, I just realized something. Stupid dial thing is slipped. Well, I'm going to go back in there and fix that, but I don't feel like doing that tonight because it's, let's face it, I'm kind of out of patience. But you get the idea. So that concludes the end of this episode of Radiorama, where I hope you learned a thing or two, or maybe you got mildly entertained by some of my stupid buffoonery. All right, guys, till the next time, see you next time. Adios.